Welcome to Black Sheep's Time to Shine. My name is Mello, and this is the place where all of the different kinds of black sheep can come together, judgment-free. And please remember that the little things in life do indeed matter. If we can't do the little things right, we're not going to be able to do the big things right. It's the reason I carry these wands around everywhere I go, in case you were wondering. But today, what I'm going to talk about is how to deal with a narcissistic child of yours. Now, of course, you got to have a little more leeway the younger they are. But once they're in middle school and up, what I'm going to say here is definitely applicable. Now, the first thing we got to do is recognize the tactics of a narcissistic child, the manipulative tactics. And often they are aggressive and they go on the offensive a lot because they know when they go on the offensive, they can get more of what they want. But the big three really are, they can guilt trip, throw a temper tantrum, or they can deflect and flip the script on the parent. Those really are the big three ways that I see them do it. And the biggest thing is, though, I had a cousin growing up, and he would do those things. He would throw a fit. He would guilt trip. He would flip the script. But the problem was, it worked too often for him. He was able to get what he wanted because his mother would eventually concede and would give in because she just didn't want to hear it anymore. And he made his mother's life a hell, but the problem was she didn't stay strong in her boundaries, and she let the manipulative behavior work. And that's the big thing. We can't let the manipulative behavior, we can't let that work because it teaches them, yes, this is how you get what you want into adulthood. And my cousin, he turned into a terror growing up too. So clearly it didn't work. Now, the first thing is to call out the behaviors when we see them. We see them guilt tripping, we call that out and we say, hey, I see what you're doing here. You're guilt tripping, and it's not going to work. You're not going to get you what you want by guilt tripping. If they throw a temper tantrum, same thing. I'm not going to speak with you and have this conversation if you're going to have a temper tantrum, and you leave. You leave the conversation. You teach them how to treat you by having clear boundaries. And then, especially when they're older, you have clear boundaries plus consequences. And consequences, they don't mean anything unless they're enforced. So you can have the boundary, but then you better also follow through on the consequence. Because if the child sees that you're not going to follow through on the consequence, then the boundary becomes meaningless. You got to have the clear boundary followed by clear consequences. And the same thing, if they try to deflect or manipulate and flip the script, you call them out on that behavior too and say, hey, this is what we're talking about here. Manipulative people, narcissistic people, they are experts at deflecting and distorting and misguiding a conversation, anything to get the focus off of their behavior. And then more so, they do these things to get what they want. And unfortunately, when it works and a manipulative person learns, hey, when I do this, I can get what I want. When I act like a victim, when I guilt trip, when I'm aggressive, when I throw a temper tantrum, when I flip the script, if those actions work, that's a major problem. And unfortunately, a lot of parents, they're pushovers with this kind of stuff. And I get it. A manipulative child, a narcissistic child can absolutely be a headache. Absolutely can be a headache. I'm not even going to pretend it can't be. But unsubscribing from the fight is key. We have a clear boundary with a clear consequence. And we do not let ourselves get emotionally sucked in to whatever they want us to get sucked into. They are experts at sucking people in. And then all of a sudden, you're talking about something different. You're talking about something that had nothing to do with the original conversation. And again, this is all by design for them. They know what they're doing, and they're able to manipulate push the conversation all around, where eventually the parent might just get exhausted and say, fine, I'm going to give you what you want. But you can't do that. What you have to do is call out the behaviors when you see them, have clear boundaries with clear consequences, leave the conversation if they're not going to be respectful about it, and teach them how to treat you and say, hey, I'm not going to tolerate this. If you're going to talk to me like this, I am not going to have this conversation, and you are definitely not going to get what you want. And again, the hardest with this will be in the beginning, because if they've been used to getting their way by being manipulative, by flipping the script, throwing temper tantrums, guilt tripping, they're going to put up some major resistance in the beginning. But that's where you got to put your foot down, and you can't let it work. You deal with the headaches a little bit, you deal with the insanity, but then you follow through with what you're going to do and say, hey, this is the boundary. If you do this, this is the consequence you will suffer. And this isn't controlling. This is giving the child the freedom to choose. Okay, they are either going to respect the boundary or they are not. And that is freedom. That is not being controlling. That's having healthy boundaries. And it's going to be difficult in the beginning, but it is very necessary for the child to grow up and have a chance. Because don't get it twisted. If that's how they are as a kid, usually, unless they are corrected, it will just get worse. And they learn to be more manipulative. They hone their tactics. They become experts at gaslighting, experts at shifting the blame, experts at guilt tripping and being aggressive, going on the offensive. And those are the type of kids that can turn into a terror. So not only this, though, if you're a parent and you have clear boundaries with clear consequences, you are doing them a favor, whether they know it or not. And so you can rest your head easy at night knowing I'm doing him or her a favor, because if they learn that being manipulative works and they're going to get their way more often, they're going to find themselves in some pretty interesting situations growing up. Now, they might get what they want sometimes, but their partners and the people that have to deal with them growing up, it's going to be a nightmare. So as the parent, know that you don't want to be pushed over anyway. You don't want to be manipulated anyway. You want to be able to stand your ground. You want to be able to have strong boundaries and be respected. Because here's the other thing. If someone's going to manipulate and get what they want, they lose respect for you. It's just human nature for them to do so. But when you hold your ground and you have firm boundaries and follow through on the consequences, they are forced to respect you. But it starts with us. We have to learn how to practice radical self-respect. We got to learn to say no, to walk out of a conversation that is going off the rails, to keep the focus on certain behaviors and what you expect from them. That, hey, this is the boundary, this is the consequence. It starts with us. And if we aren't able to do this ourselves, it's going to be very difficult to communicate it to others. So it starts with us, but it is very possible. And again, in the beginning, it's going to be the most difficult, especially if you've let yourself get pushed over or manipulated in the past. They are going to expect that behavior to work, but got to put the foot down, have strong boundaries, say no and mean it, and eventually they will learn to respect you. Now, you have to follow through on the consequences, though, because if you don't, they will learn the boundaries are meaningless. So, in my eyes, that's how you deal with this. And do not get sucked into their emotional arguments. Do not defend yourself. No jade, no justifying, arguing, defending, and explaining. And they may try to do Darvo, defend, accuse, reverse victim, and offender. Those are usually the tactics, but don't defend. Don't argue. State clearly and plainly, this is the boundary. This is how I expect you to act. And if you don't act this way, this is the consequence. And you leave it at that. You give them the freedom to choose what they want to do. And if they choose not to, then they are also choosing to suffer the consequence. whatever that may be in the scenario. So, to me, that's how you deal with a narcissistic child, a manipulative child. And it's important to nip this stuff in the butt as young as possible, because if it's not, they get worse and they get worse, and they can turn into some pretty abusive people into adulthood. It happens a lot. And what contributes to this is when the parents are pushovers and they don't put their foot down. It encourages that behavior, and the kids get worse and worse, and the people they deal with in life are in for a nightmare. Don't let that happen. It can be prevented, I believe, in certain cases. So, and it starts with us. It starts with the clear boundaries, with clear consequences, not being a pushover. And hey, you can do this. It might be a headache at first, but it is definitely possible. So with that, I think that's it for today. Let me know what you think about this video. If you liked the video, please like it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Hit the notification bell. And maybe share this video with someone that is struggling with this very scenario, because there are a lot of people out there struggling with it. They've told me specifically this. So maybe share this video with them to see what they think. Maybe they can start implementing some of this stuff too. Also, yes, comment below what you think as well. So with that, thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.